Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to Broadcast to Post, Keycode Media series hosting industry professionals discussing broadcast, production, and post-technology topics that you care about. I'm Jeff Sengpiehl, the Chief Technologist here at Keycode Media. Today we're going to high level with a cloudy future for post-production. We're bringing together a panel of post-production engineers and manufacturers discussing the challenges faced by teams transitioning to a cloud or a cloud hybrid post-production workflow. Why is Keycode Media discussing cloud post-production? We've been the preferred post-production dealer and systems integrator for installing and supporting small and large collaborative post-production infrastructure. Edit suites, color suites, audio suites, shared storage, ingest to delivery, archive, and now cloud-connected solutions. Our success in designing, installing, and supporting post-production systems comes from our eclectic and experienced teams that successfully install a broad range of audiovisual, broadcast, and post-production equipment solutions. Combine that with our 24/7 KTC aftermarket support plans and certified training, and your team has everything it needs to implement your ideal system with ease. Lastly, Keycode Education provides industry-recognized certification. So if you work for a qualifying media company, your staff can receive free training with our ETP program. We offer a variety of classes covering post-production job training, Avid, Adobe, Resolve training, and more. Classes are available for individual or groups and currently run live online and in person and on site. Check out our full class offerings on our website. So enough with the infomercial. One of the most fascinating areas of technology over the long, strange trip that this past year has been is cloud technology's advancement into post-production. When production teams, editors, colorists, producers all had to start working from home, facilities had to rethink the fundamentals of operating a post-production facility. All sorts of solutions solved parts of the puzzle for remote work in 2020. But now that the dust has settled, our industry is starting to evaluate their entire post-production ecosystem and determine what makes sense to lift and shift into the cloud, or what incremental steps can be taken to transitioning everything there. Let's get into a few basics here. Let's kick it off with what types of cloud tools exist for post-production. First off, virtual workstations. These workstations help editors access powerful creative computing hosted in the cloud using control protocols like PCOIP. Cloud storage. Cloud storage simply provides tiers of fast, active, or slow archive storage. There's also storage file systems that can be overlaid on those in the cloud, like Avid and EditShare's EFSV, which mirror how facility storage works and responds, but just in the cloud. Then there's data transfer tools enabled to allow quicker delivery of media in and out of the cloud, like Storage DNA. Then there's file synchronization, giving users the ability to view and edit all cloud-based media, downloading files that you need locally, or just using media on your timeline streaming from the cloud. There's cloud encoders, which are enabled high-quality video streams from the cloud. That's for editors who are at home or folks who are watching over the shoulder for review and approve. Then there's cloud transcoding, highly scalable systems that process media at levels that would be really cost prohibitive for doing this on premises. Then there's cloud media management tools, which allow your media asset library to be accessed by a team or by your clients via a web browser with tagging, commenting, downloading, and a host of other features for teams. Storage, it's where things are. Compute, it's how things are done. So when it comes to non-linear editing collaboration in the cloud, the approaches have varied. Avid Media Composer just announced Avid's Edit on Demand. It's a packaged solution which includes Avid Virtual Workstation, data transfer, and collaboration functionality. Adobe Premiere Pro. Adobe recently invented in cloud startup LucidLink, which provides cloud storage and synchronization functionality, allowing editors to edit multiple streams of video directly from the cloud at their home with their Adobe desktop application. It's a true cloud hybrid workflow. There are also a host of third-party solutions that bring NLE experiences and the entire post-production process into the cloud. Let's take a high-level look at some of the solution providers and their services for each step of the process. So looking at virtual workstations, BeBop Technology and Teradici provide zero clients and thin clients so customers can edit using high-powered virtual workstations with most NLE and imported plugins built right in the cloud. Then there's cloud storage. Amazon AWS, Simple Storage Service, or S3, provides just that, simple storage, and is the most commonly used. There's 6 Amazon AWS cloud storage products available, but it's worth mentioning that Amazon Glacier, which is cloud archive storage, and then there's some providers like Avid's Edit On Demand and EditShare's EFSV that provide entire file system ecosystems which give you those common facility level tools over the cloud storage. Then there's data transfer tools. If you're using a BeBop solution, BeBop Rocket quickly moves media into your cloud storage. Amazon AWS Snowcone or Snowball is another popular premise to cloud data moving tool. Load it, FedEx it to the cloud. File synchronization. So we discussed LucidLink a little bit earlier as a streaming platform which allows cloud data to reach your computer. However, when it comes to having many editors using multicam or large amounts of media, Storage DNA Fabric provides an enterprise approach to syncing files from a facility and multiple at-home editor locations using the cloud as the bounce point. Then cloud encoders. So depending upon the application, BeBop Rev allows real-time over-the-shoulder collaboration within their ecosystem. Teradici uses PC OIP to secure high-quality control for remote. Then cloud transcoding. Our friends at Telestream have Vantage Cloud Port, which can simultaneously process on-prem and cloud-based content in a single workflow. Then cloud media management tools. Frame.io and many others have review and approve workflows in the cloud that keep teams in tight communication, even when team members are from outside your organization. So let's please keep in mind, we're only giving a few brief examples here. There are many types of solutions that fit a variety of needs and budgets. Contact Keycode Media to get the conversation started on what the best cloud post-production path is for your business. All right, we'll be getting to our expert panel discussion now. I'm going to be asking our cloud experts a variety of questions about cloud solutions, about security, the best approach by NLE, and jobs that might be created to fit this new cloud paradigm. After my initial questions, we'll be answering all of our audience questions. Please submit these questions at any time on the YouTube, Facebook, or Vimeo embedded landing page chat. Let's get into who we've got with us today. Michael Kammes, the VP of Business Development at BeBop Technology, also creator of the 5 Things podcast, and a Keycode alumni. Michael is a thought leader in the cloud and post-production space, and we're excited to have him join us again. And Ian McPherson, he's the head of Global Business Development Media Supply Chain at Amazon Web Services, AWS. In his current role at AWS, he manages relationships with AWS's ecosystem of independent software vendor partners in the film, broadcast, and publishing worlds. That includes developing new partnerships, providing technical support for AWS service integration, and promoting cloud-based solutions for media workflows. And another Ian. Ian Main is Technical Marketing Principal at Teradici. Ian is passionate about helping enterprises virtualize complex graphics workloads in the cloud. Ian sports 15 years of experience at Teradici and is currently involved in product education, performance benchmarking, customer requirements analysis, and architectural aspects of PC OIP protocol design. And myself, Jeff Sengpiehl, CTO at Keycode Media. I've got over 30 years of experience building complex post-production workflows for film and television, gluing together all the pieces, no matter where they can be found, into bulletproof systems that work for the best production companies in the industry. Okay, let's get into the panel. All right, let's jump into it. First thing, There's a lot of consumer cloud solutions. Why don't they work for professional production? Dropbox, Google Drive, they're out there for storage. TeamViewer works for remote desktop. It's been around forever. Why don't these consumer solutions work in this space, gentlemen?
Well, I can start that discussion. I think a lot of the consumer, if I understood the question correctly, why don't these consumer cloud solutions work for professionals? Was that the question?
That is the question.
Okay. There's a bunch of issues. First, if we look at things like screen sharing technologies, right? There's a lot of systems out there that are best served for IT usage that don't give you full frame rate or color accuracy or audio and video fidelity or low latency. They're meant for someone to go in and install an application and then let the user continue. We then move into some of the cloud technologies. We're dealing with storage that is optimized to balance cost and speed, but it comes at the detriment to a user experience where the media won't play back fast enough because it's using storage that has higher latency, but it's more affordable. And I'm sure both Ians on the call can add other reasons why as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Ian.
Mike. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to to add to that on the security front. So obviously, when you're looking at professional productions, your content network is a vital part of that overall secure solution. So you need to secure your data. And if you're going to be using, for example, a VPN to pull your assets down to a local machine at home or in your office, you now have a footprint for your security that now is in two places. You've got your content network remotely, and you've got your processing and your editor locally. So it's best to have those things together. And the big move is obviously to move the workstation towards the data up in the cloud. So from a compliance point of view, if you're looking to do, MPAA best practices or trusted partner network type compliance, then you would typically have your data secured in a cloud, and then have your application also secured close by.
Yeah, I would echo both those sentiments, and I also add, besides the security and the challenges of moving that, we look at something like the Movie Labs 2030 vision for how content gets moved through a supply chain, right? And you get the content into the cloud as soon as possible, and then you bring the applications to the content instead of moving the content all around. At the end of the day, you're compressing those cycles, you're reducing the time it takes to get to the outcome or the value, and you're also able to capitalize on the variability of the demands of the application and use cloud for bursting, whether it's for the post-production and rendering jobs, or you're looking to bring in additional capabilities and services. You're not now waiting on moving that between a workstation or between entities and third parties.
I will say there is a little bit of a hybrid. In fact, you mentioned them at the onset, Jeff, which is LucidLink, right? Just one of the most mind-blowingly awesome technologies I've seen in the past several years. That's utilizing the public cloud, which by itself can be problematic to work with in a real-time environment, just like Google Drive and Dropbox, where you have to push-pull media in order to use it. LucidLink sits on top of public cloud storage, or even storage only clouds like Backblaze or Wasabi. But since it caches the frames that you request locally, your system can access it faster. So that's a great hybrid where you're using publicly available components, but using it for a media intensive workflow.
And the other thing about being in the cloud, there's at the end of your production, you can also hand the bucket over to someone else and say, this is yours now. If you'd like to keep it, you can. You hold the keys to the kingdom. I'm done with it. So let's jump to one thing that has come up over the last year quite a bit, kind of these roadblocks to cloud adoption. So I'm going to take a bunch of questions that have come in and kind of compact them into one batch here. What do customers bring up as to why there's no cloud solution for them today? And what does that mean for future developments going forward? Concerns about costs for ingest and egress. Engineers have always figured out things in advance. Systems and storage have had this predictable cost structure, especially in Hollywood. There's a rental fee, and there's support, and staff is your editorial staff. How are they going to be able to accurately predict these costs? some concerns about audio. I've been working on my latest show with 2.1. How can I get that out of a remote control environment into the cloud? Sometimes over COVID, my internet has been horrible. It's laggy and it cuts out. How can we help editors deal with these at home, deal with bad service providers? What kind of connectivity do facilities need to feed media up to the cloud? What do you need at home? And then IT people, and it was mentioned before about security. How safe is the media going to be? Sometimes a single frame of content is worth millions of dollars. What assurances are there on security? A lot to unpack there, but let's jump into that. Amazon Ian, or Teradici Ian, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me take give on the connector between some of these components. You know, we see this amazing opportunity now with this age of rich options. So, you know, they can go with a SaaS editing service. They can go for the platform like BeBop, where they actually have it integrated, or they can actually roll their own on AWS and build a turnkey pipeline. So all those options are available, and that's really awesome. So I think the resistance to that seems like an overwhelming bunch of options. So I would say take a small start and then, you know, plunge in with that first step. And what we've noticed, you know, there's this question around what's the economics of this. We have so many examples now of editorial studios as well as visual effects studios that have built end-to-end pipelines purely in the cloud. Untold Studios is a great one built on AWS. Teradici has other customers like Jellyfish, which have, you know, big cloud native solutions, and the economics are working for them. And these companies are growing well, and I would say they're getting bigger and better as a consequence of this new world order where we're doing a lot more remote work. So I think it's, of course, you need to do your diligence on what the numbers look like and what's the bit, you know, the cost per bit in and out of your cloud service and your storage fees. But what you should look to is the success models of all of this. And then on the security, again, we touched that before, is there's all these big studios which are starting to use the cloud are getting the compliance they need to do large production. So at that high level, this is a big bright light that we should be heading towards.
Yeah, I'll follow on that. And I think first thing to know is it's really important to follow best practices around your general cloud operations. And it's, you know, reach out to us and we're happy to help work with you, because that's going to include best practices around securing your content. And we have a shared responsibility model for security where we're going to provide the lockdown of the lower levels of the stack, but we're going to give you the tools to decide what's the best and the most proper security policies and protocols for you. But what you are getting is, with centralizing your content and storing it in the cloud, is you're getting a common security model. And so your IT professionals will be able to implement security against that content, and access rights and encryption is a standard way across all of the users. The other thing is, you know, when it comes to best practices and costs, you know, it's really important that you understand, you know, how to implement things like auto scaling and spinning up and spinning down your infrastructure as it's needed and on demand. That's obviously one of the values of the cloud, is it's there and available. So as you need more capacity, it's there for you. But making sure that you're winding those things down and you're not realizing undue and unnecessary costs is also another important part of that equation.
I'll give the unpopular opinion, and I know I'm going to get roasted for this, but the handful of blockers are usually cost, and part of what I do at BeBop, I swear half my time is spent being a cloud Sherpa and actually estimating what your per user cost is going to be, and it's still several $100s per user in the cloud without batting an eye. The other blocker, and anyone who's been in the media and entertainment space knows that the media and entertainment creatives are usually risk averse, right? They make their money on how fast they can edit, how fast they can turn around. And when you have to use new tools, that increases that time, and they can't hit those deadlines that they're so adept at doing. So we found that over the past year or so, when people went home and worked remote, they said, we want to keep working remote, but we don't want to learn anything new. So this has to work just like it did before. And there has to be the acceptance that if you want this increased benefit, you want the flexibility to work remote and to have all the extensibility of the cloud, you have to pivot to some extent. You have to learn. You have to understand that right now, if you are a Mac enthusiast, which is fine, In the cloud, it's predominantly Windows for the time being. If your shortcut keys have to be remapped, you have to do that. You have to not work wirelessly. Plug your computer in at home. And I am not joking. People complain about the cloud, but 9 times out of 10, it's because they're working wirelessly, or they have a partner at home who's also doing a Zoom conference, and children who are doing distance education, and they're streaming Netflix at the same time. So there has to be this, if you want to use what the cloud has, you have to put your best foot forward and put yourself in the best place for success. And if you're not willing to do that, it's going to fail every time.
Yeah, it's just like you can't sit out in the sun and make color grading decisions with that kind of a monitor. There's certain things you still have to follow the rules, best practices, and there's definitely ways to eliminate most of the problems that people have run into. Okay.
I guess, I mean, to the flip side of that same discussion are the benefits, right? Because there's that cost, which, is not necessarily lower, but you now get your geo presence, international capability. You got collaboration on a production that could be covering many continents, as we showed with an HPA Lost Lederhausen project several years in a row now that our friends at AWS and BeBop have both been part of. That shows that you can do these big, rather large and impressive projects. So you get all that, you get collaboration, you get this ability to turn down your resources when you're not needing them. So you now can control your costs in other ways. So as you move to that OpEx model, there's lots of benefits.
Yeah, I was so glad you mentioned that, because I was going to bring that up. I couldn't agree more. And if you think about the ability to just add a new creative somewhere else in the world and have them productive in a matter of minutes, instead of having long procurement cycles and everything that goes with that, there's huge benefits. And certainly we on our end try to do as much as we can to automate and reduce the complexity to the entity. So this year we announced Nimble Studios, which is basically a construct that lets people stand up a post-production environment in a matter of minutes, where it might have taken hours or days before, because we've got the scripts and we've got the integrations and CloudFormation templates that allow you to create that and provision that environment with a few clicks of the button. So, I mean, the immediacy of that and the on-demand nature of that, coupled with the fact we're relieving some of the responsibility from the IT departments and the people who have to support this environment, means we have to look at the benefits here too.
Yeah, and that was the next set of questions, getting into the benefits. I mean, just one word: LA expats. Well, that's 2 words, but there's plenty of people I know who've decided, yeah, I'm done with the 101. I'm done with the 405. I'm done with the 10. I'm out. I'm going to go live in North Carolina, and I'm still going to do the work I've been doing in Hollywood, but I'm just going to do it somewhere else because I can. So a couple other questions. There's the freight train. Life is getting back to normal here. A couple other questions that came up with the benefits, and some of them are kind of grouped them a little weirdly. Can you work from a cloud edit setup and still use other cloud-based edit tools or frameworks, Frame.io, for example?
I can jump in on that. Best practice is to try and use services that are on the same cloud. That's because, and I mean no disrespect, AWS Ian, but there's the concept of egress, right? Which is anytime you're moving data from a cloud region or area or data center down to your local machine or to someone else across the world, there's a toll. You just like in Illinois, as you know, Jeff, there's toll roads, right? And you have to pay to use that toll road, and that's something that I'm really not a fan of, and it scares people. It scares people because that's another unknown, as you mentioned earlier. We can estimate how much the cloud's going to cost to use it, but egress is always a question mark. So that's something that you need to be aware of. If you are working on a platform such as BeBop, we've built tools that allow you to say, look, you can use Frame.io on BeBop. You're accessing all the Frame infrastructure, but you're doing it from a BeBop workstation. But again, you're still dealing with, well, are you playing back content on Frame that's in a different region, right? So best practice is to always try and use the services that are sitting on the same cloud in the same region if possible.
Awesome. One other question that's come up. Production companies like to sign sign deals for post-production at the very last minute, like the day before. And then they want to drop terabytes on the doorstop of somebody, of camera media, and they want everything now. How is someone able to get that into a cloud system quickly? Should there be transcoding? How to make that happen in these tight turn environments that people are coming up with?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we have a number of options for getting content, accelerating content in the ingest process. Some of those are our own services and connections like Direct Connect, where you'd have a high-speed connection. Certainly, there's third-party transfer acceleration technologies. And there's also the bulk uploads with things like our Snowball product, where you can take large volumes of data and load that onto a pre-configured hard drive, and it's shipped into AWS and gets loaded up right away.
Yeah, to Ian's point there, I mean, for people who are unfamiliar with this idea of virtual workstations, once you've done that ingest, then your data is at rest, or and more or less, and you've got very high bandwidth connections between components in your pipeline. So when you're streaming pixels down to the editor, that's a really lightweight workload compared to these ginormous files. So and you're trading off basically that getting that back end more efficient it has orders of magnitude more efficiency on your overall interactivity compared to, and then streaming pixels compared to pulling files up and down from any resource, whether this is whether you're in the enterprise or in the cloud. So I think that's why the industry's moved this way.
If time is of the essence, create proxies, upload proxies, edit with the proxies. It's going to be cheaper. It'll take more time on the front end to create the proxies, but your storage cost in the cloud will be cheaper because you're using proxies as opposed to 6K, 8K raw files. Anyone who's done work in the M&E space is familiar with offline online processes, so you should be able to handle that without a heavy lift, but definitely proxies are the fastest way to get started.
And daily systems are still out there. They're still going to be able to create those proxies in onset or near set workflows, and then just put them up to the cloud as opposed to putting them on a rugged drive and FedExing it or having a runner take it to post. One other interesting question that's come in, someone was asking, what are the different types of media management cloud-based workflows commonly used in this adoption phase? How to use media management workflow to cater to the post-productions in several geographic locations? The thing is, there's a kind of a thought disconnect there. It's one location, it's in the cloud. So it doesn't matter that you've got geodiversity in your users, your media and your workstations are still in one spot in the cloud. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Arkansas or Los Angeles or upstate New York, you can still get the same work done. The same set of tools is just locally on that setup, which is local to the cloud. So getting into a little bit more on the security, some other questions are coming in. Brother Rick, an interesting name, is asking about ransomware. How do we prevent cloud productions from getting hacked?
I guess I can jump in, and I don't want to monopolize, but we at BeBop take this vitally seriously. So we love to incorporate with things like SSO, right? So so single sign-on or SSO is incorporated with whatever your local policies are at your facility. We also do things like we don't allow recording of demos and training sessions. We make sure that folks can only upload or download if they have permission. We don't allow people to share their screen with people who aren't already in the BeBop ecosystem. Anytime we play video out, you have to have a passcode and a URL to get there. We're not exposing any kind of public keys or any security through open email. It's all done through neolinks. So we take that very seriously because we don't want to get to a situation that happened with Sony and several other studios where things leak out and then we're blamed for it when maybe it was just an assistant who forgot to log out, right? So we take that extraordinarily seriously.
Of course, if you're using a protocol like PCI over IP, you have inherent network layers isolation because you're just sending these pixels between the endpoint and the cloud resource. So you don't actually have penetration of the network. Now, of course, the endpoint device is an area that is generally, using a remote computing style is much more secure than having your local content that could be compromised. But so once you've separated to a thin client or zero client style device, you already have a much more secure architecture. But hand in hand with that ransomware note, the US government has just put out an executive order last week to have all government departments start incorporating zero trust, which is a paradigm for making sure that you trust and verify for all aspects. And this is a big way that we're going to knock out this ransomware through this secure and validate. And anytime anything does penetrate the network, it's going to have a very small area to operate. And Teradici is already far down the path of our zero trust architecture and building out our next generation there. We've got some blogs and things posted if you're looking for resources. And coming this summer, these endpoint devices themselves will be trusted and authorized. So in addition to the security steps and measures that Michael talked about there in terms of authentication of the user, what we're looking to do is authenticate and authorize devices so that a particular device may get a window of a few hours. So if you're doing a pipeline with a few contractors, contractor A gets a few hours on a particular day to do a particular task with a particular machine instance, and both the client side and the agent side would be trusted for that particular period. And that's the new paradigm that all enterprises are moving to, and the public cloud is going to be a great place for this to happen.
It definitely is. And a couple things that are interesting on the whole ransomware front. Just today, it was announced that the government was able to recover the ransom that was paid by the Colonial Pipeline folks. So if you remove the money that can be made from executing a ransomware attack, that's going to take a lot of wind out of sails. And the other thing there is, there's a question of, okay, what sorts of infrastructures are a lot more vulnerable, on-prem or in cloud? And generally, from my understanding, the in-cloud infrastructures are a heck of a lot more secure than most people can have on-prem. Amazon Ian, you want to talk to that?
Well, I would characterize our capability to deliver security across all phases, from process to technology to policy, and working with customers as we have a higher bar certainly than most individual users are going to apply to their own IT environment. I would encourage you to work with us and reach out to us. I mean, we have security experts, we have processes, we have something called a well-architected review, where we'll go through your security policies and make sure they adhere to the best practices in using two-factor authentication or setting proper IAM roles for how content's accessed and managed. So don't go it alone, and we're certainly here to help you, all the way up to our CISO.
Jeff, I think there's something also that we should address, and that's right now security is completely bespoke. Every single facility, every single production is, I don't want to say winging it, but they're doing the best they can without there being a, for lack of a better term, governing body that says this is certified, right? And I think that's where we're getting at with governing bodies of security like TPN, Trusted Partner Network. And I think once that organization comes out with this is the baseline, and everything that we deem as being needed meets that requirement, that becomes almost a checkbox. Oh, you meet those requirements? Boom, security pass, done. Because right now, it's every organization has their own 40-page document where you have to justify each security parameter and why and whether you do it or not. And once TPN has this cloud certification, it will make utilizing the cloud that much quicker and that much safer.
Most definitely. And zero trust is going to go a long way. If you get media and you can't do anything with it and you can't lock it up, it's of no value to even try. It's risk versus reward. That's really what it's kind of all about there. If we remove the reward, it's really not worth the risk for a lot of folks. So changing gears, there's questions that have come up about platform wars, about what editing platforms, what computing platforms. So a lot of post-productions typically standardize on one or a few nonlinear editing software pieces. You've got Premiere, you've got Composer, you've got DaVinci Resolve. How does a post-production's choice of a specific NLE factor into deciding a path toward cloud post? Can you talk about plugins and licensing and all that fun sort of stuff? and then the one topper on this cake is Teradici for Mac. When? It's already come in a couple times.
Oh, I can clear that one right off the top because I'm excited by that stuff. I think we all are. Yeah, so Teradici for Mac, I mean, we announced our public beta just this week, so that's good timing. We've got a blog posting and you can sign up to join the beta program. So I think, Mac workstations on premises are there, but, Mac is a bigger story. I think I'll let AWS and also talk to AWS's involvement with Mac Mini, and there's more than your editor. There's the pipeline and your CI/CD stuff where AWS actually have solutions today. Teradici is also partnering with Mac Stadium for other Mac solutions. So Mac, keep posted. There's lots happening there. In terms of selection of editorial software, Teradici is agnostic to that, but we would say, make sure you've got your peripherals all sorted out, your color wheels and things, that those are all going to work properly. And then you've got a platform that's got a good connection between the storage and the editorial side of it.
Yeah, and certainly AWS announced earlier this year, reInvent, we have now a Mac fleet in terms of our compute options. Those are really targeted right now at developers, and it's really the use case is really for development on Mac, more so than running applications or BYOL on Macintosh or Minis. But I mean, that's why we have partners like Teradici, as Ian was just pointing out, to be able to enable that virtualized workstation environment with Mac.
Here's the rundown. And I come from the creative space, so this is something I'm talking about daily. Let's run them down, right? The first one's Avid. Avid is available on Azure and Azure only. That's because that's where the Nexus file system has been virtualized. That's an agreement Microsoft and Avid have. You have to pay Avid to use that. And that, although they've dropped their prices, it's still, I think a couple thousand a month, I believe, per user. But here's a pro tip. There's a GitHub repo on how to deploy Media Composer on Azure that you can do without paying Avid. Second of all, if we look at Adobe actually has published documents on VDI. So you can do a virtual deployment, and they even say, here's the cloud you can deploy it on. Here are the instance sizes and types. Go ahead and do it. We look at Final Cut Pro. There was a big brouhaha last year because Apple changed the EULA with Final Cut, and it freaked a lot of users out because it seemed to suggest that they were going to move to a subscription model. No, they were moving it so you could use it in the cloud at an as-needed basis instead of just buying it. As Ian from AWS pointed out, there are Mac Minis, which are great. However, they may not be applicable for media-centric applications. And as you pointed out, very much dev-centric. I'm thrilled to hear about Mac Stadium. I'm interested to review that pricing to see if that falls in with what works. I think what most people need to realize is that if they are utilizing the public cloud for these NLEs, you need to understand that for right now, it's going to be Windows-based. And once you get into the application, it's 95% the same, right? So there has to be kind of the expectation that Windows is probably going to be the way to go for the foreseeable future until powerful Macs with Teradici are going to be available for you to create on those.
Cool. So shifting gears again, let's get into people and careers. A lot of things are shifting. So are there new types of jobs that are being developed in post facilities to manage cloud? What kind of training and tools are there to help people make these transitions? Are there any class of jobs that might not be around in a couple of years because facilities are transitioning to cloud? And do you think there's going to be post-production solutions architects living in the post and production space going forward?
Well, I'll just kick it off. I think there's lots to talk about there, but I think at the end of the day, I think the desktop IT role is the one that's evolving the quickest because the desktop is going to have less intelligence. When I say desktop, the local client endpoint that the user is interacting with, and that intelligence is moving off to services where companies like BeBop are building on magic on top of companies like AWS who are building additional magic. So I think there's a big evolution of skills. Security, we've already talked about. So, there's all these new roles that are going to be in security, in how do you manage these workflows, and how do you take advantage of all these big tools that are coming on offer. So I think these are new skills and new resources needed. And then some of the more traditional desktop ones, I think they're still always required, but those people who do that will also now be involved in automation. How do you deploy endpoints in somebody's home without the artist potentially having to understand the endpoint that they're interacting with? So can you remotely configure these devices and operate them securely? And if the person is using a Wi-Fi network, how do you suggest to them that they plug it in, as an example? So all these things, I think, are opportunities for automation.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And I would say that we look at IT as a sort of a corollary and say, we see a lot of people moving out of the traditional administration of hardware and the systems and into a more DevOps environment. So you're now managing the availability and controlling costs and just managing security on the stack rather than the deployment of the actual physical infrastructure. But in terms of new jobs, especially with technical creatives, I think the area around virtual production is just about to explode. And I think it's so exciting in terms of what's going to be possible here in the next 5 years for people to go and take those new gaming engines and real-time environments and build really compelling content experiences.
Awesome. So there's been a couple questions about control interfaces. How do we get third full screen picture monitor back to my setup? How do you manage local hardware, the local at your home hardware, like monitoring interfaces that have been requiring PCI cards in the past? Someone says, I'm running PCOIP locally. Does the cloud solution make my host card and my Zero client obsolete?
Yeah, I can tackle a few of those. I mean, we talk about host cards and Zero clients. So host cards are an enterprise construct. The Zero clients connect to AWS or they connect to BeBop. And those Zero clients are evolving to this trusted secure clients that I talked about in Zero Trust model. That first question, that was about, could you just...
Sure. How do we get third full screen picture monitor back to my
Yeah,
setup?
I thought that one was for me too, as well as the others. So the way to do it is, AWS have services like Elemental, or there's third parties like SohoNet who do streaming for those review monitors. And Teradici does have roadmap to incorporate that clean feed into our protocol itself, which would make it a more elegant solution. We don't have that on the market today, but we certainly get that request.
I give a few points to add. When do I not have points to add? It falls on the NLE manufacturers to support outputs that are not hardware reliant, right? Media Composer, for example, has had NDI support built into OpenIO, I think, for the past 2 or 3 years. That's obviously, for those who don't know NDI, it's being able to play imagine replacing your HDMI or SDI cable with Ethernet. Right, that's kind of the basic concept. But NDI is a bandwidth hog, even at the smaller data rates. SMPTE has limited support for compressed video outputs, but that's still kind of in its infancy. Then you have NLEs like Resolve, which say, no, we're not supporting NDI. We're not supporting anything unless it's a hardware card or TICO, which is another video over IP solution. But there are some caveats. You have to have a decent internet connection. You have to have a box at your house that will convert Ethernet to HDMI or SDI. And if you think remoting into a system in the cloud right now is kind of a choppy experience, wait till you start pulling full screen video. So there are some considerations to be done. And even if you do accomplish that, are you saying, well, look, I need 444 10-bit? You probably want to go to 422 at 1080 right now. So there's a lot of considerations. Can it be done? Yes. BeBop has dozens of clients that are doing that on a daily and hourly basis, but there are some considerations to be made before it's done.
So a couple things to add to that. First of all, NDI version 5 just was announced last week. There's some fundamental changes in how that works. In a couple of weeks, we're actually sitting down with Dr. Andrew Cross from Newtek to talk about NDI and the future. And as Michael mentioned, yes, there's the plugin setups that are available, well, the OpenIO available, and in Adobe as well. So there's ways to get a stream out via NDI. And with the new versions of NDI, it may be possible to get that all the way to your house. Then it just becomes a synchronization question. Also, our friends at Streambox have a solution that can be cloud-based and received at home. So there's different interesting ways to get there. Let's see what we've got still on questions. So just a simple process question from Teresa. If a production company wants to set up a new location for post, what would be the process to set up the cloud-based system in place of a server like Nexus or others, replacing the need to go to a traditional post house so that a new office can have on-site post workflows or remote ones?
I can take that.
But go for that first, Michael.
I'll take that. That is totally done. As an example, we've been doing that for years with NHRA. NHRA is getting footage from the tracks where the races are going. That content is sent up to the cloud. The editors who are either at the NHRA building in Glendale, or Glendora, pardon me, then can edit with BeBop in the cloud, access that content, and then when they go home, they can access it the same way. So it's always sitting in the cloud. That's something that BeBop does as a managed service. Think of a white glove approach. So we get your credentials, we get your credit card, and then we deploy it for you and you're ready to go, usually in a week or two. But that's, an all-encompassing solution. If you wanted to do it on AWS, for example, they have workspaces, which is great, but it does require you to bring kind of different erector set parts together to get the entire post experience you're looking for.
So one of the very interesting things that we've had people approach us lately on is, how am I going to get back into the office? And I'm an editor and I want to work 3 days at home, but be in the office 2 days a week. So a lot of people took a lot of gear home. You got a laptop and you got a pair of monitors, you got a keyboard, you got speakers, all set up so that you can edit either with a local system or from a cloud-based instance. The thing is, if you're working on a cloud-based instance, instead of having to pick up all that stuff and move it to the office like you would with an on-prem setup, you can edit in the office from your cloud instance. So it might be possible, you've got a Nexus or an edit share down the hall, and you've got all your media there, but it's synchronizing up to the cloud because you're sending proxies up there, and maybe you're doing your finish back at the facility. But instead of there being an entire system that you're actually running, you're actually running a PC OIP instance. You're running a Teradici on a pair of monitors with your speakers and possibly that third monitor over here in facility, but you're connected to your cloud instance outside, not connected to a local system. So there's different ways to do that, and hybrid's going to present a lot of challenges because coming from the facility engineering side, I don't want you bringing all of your stuff in twice a week, so it needs to be set up each morning and then broken down at night to go back in the trunk of your car. And then on Wednesday, you call me and tell me that it's not working at your house. Just have a cloud set up, remote control it from one location or remote control it from another. Don't drag all that stuff all over the place. The 101 and the 405 are still as bumpy as they ever were.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't had a desktop meaningful locally for more than 10 years. So, I can't even imagine. And I will add, of course, that whether you're using BeBop or rolling your own, we have a management plane that takes care of that assignment between the users and the devices and their workstations, no matter where they are. So the user experience needs to be the same so that when they're sitting at home or when they're somewhere else, they're getting that same interaction with their system and they don't have to change everything. That's what's disruptive.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly think you've got great experts here to help you on the client side of this equation. On the back end in the cloud and getting things stood up quickly, I don't want to belabor it, but I would say take a look at the Nimble Studios offering. Those are pre-built AMIs or Amazon Machine Images that allow you to provision those environments, very quickly. And so getting your office capable with a cloud-based post-production environment can happen in a day.
And the entire thing can be stored on a thumb drive sitting on your hand. So that's the cool thing about having CloudFormation templates. You can download them, keep them, and let's roll it out here or roll it out there. That makes setting up a post environment very simple. Or you give us a holler and we'll set you up with BeBop and get you cooking that way. So thanks everybody for staying with us. We still have a bunch of questions we're going to knock out. We kind of gone over our normal time that we would be cutting off, but it's important. So let's knock some of this stuff out. So is there a solution to have the entire proxy original management painlessly done without rugged drives? And there was another question that kind of goes in there. No, that doesn't go in there. That's a statement. So a way to have there be proxy and original camera management without having to pass rugged drives around.
Well, sure. If we look at solutions like Frame.io, right, which has their new camera to cloud initiative, where they're using certain pieces of hardware on set to upload proxies directly to the cloud, that's certainly an option. You could also use it in a more scaled down fashion, which is, wherever you're shooting, make sure you have something like live view or some kind of bonded internet, bonded connection to get up to the cloud, and then just upload things to AWS or whatever you're using. And then you can create proxies in the cloud, use the proxies in the cloud, or you can have the DIT on set, take the camera originals, create proxies, and upload those. And that all gets away from the rugged drives. That being said, you always want to have 3 backups. So there's nothing wrong with keeping content on a rugged drive because when you do the reconform, when you're finished, if you've cut with proxies in the cloud, you got to reconform to the high res somewhere. So if the high res is sitting on the rugged drives, that's something that you can then relink to for your final output.
Cool. So questions regarding speed. David wants to know recommended internet speed at the facility to use cloud and regular internet. And Rummer Studios is asking, how fast of a connection do we really need for cloud? And then David is asking a very important question. What are the failover systems if the cloud or the internet fails?
Well, let's tackle the bandwidth network connectivity. That one comes up all the time. And the answer is always it depends. Because you're sending pixels. So if you have a higher resolution display, you're sending more pixels. And if you have a higher frame rate, you're sending more pixels. So if you're doing visual effects full screen at 60 frames per second, that requires more bandwidth than 24 frame per second 1080p video. So what Teradici has guidelines. We have reference designs with AWS in terms of guidelines, and I believe BeBop too. We all provide guidelines on the types of networks. Typically a 10 megabit per second network to your cloud would give you a dual display 1080p system, maybe 20 megabits if you're doing 4K, which is now just emerging. So that's sort of the network. Then there's a latency question too, but what we find is, if even up to 40, 50 milliseconds of round trip latency, you get a highly interactive user experience, which means you'll have a cloud resource somewhere in your vicinity within several hundreds of miles or even thousands of miles that'll give you the option of the connectivity and the interactivity side of it. For failover, that's an architectural question. Maybe Ian has some answers on that.
Ian, I wanted to ask you, with PC over IP and PC over IP Ultra, what are kind of the thresholds? I mean, our gold standard has always been 20 to 50 megabits, right? And that would allow you for, nominal pixel changes up to a lot of pixel changes. Is that still kind of the goal, 20 to 50, or has that changed?
I would say, well, what has changed is that this end of last year, Teradici launched a feature of Ultra within the Ultra umbrella called PC over IP Auto Offload. What that does is our protocol switches seamlessly between H.264 encoding, which would generally be using 10 megabits or less. And then when you're getting to that high color accuracy, let's say you're doing some kind of color conformance at a lower bit rate, you get to the 100% color accurate image. So you're always within a lower threshold. So that option we're finding people doing even over 3G networks are doing that ability to do H.264 at a lower quality in that case. But 50 megabits would be for a very high quality, accurate, very smooth frame playout for those people who have a high demand. We have, when people are doing dailies editing, for example, their image quality side of it is less important than having just an interactive system where they can move fast. And so, a 10 megabit link is for that. But if people are doing the back-end QA, I think you're correct on that's higher bandwidth need.
Jeff, you had mentioned a failover. What happens if the internet goes out? Yeah, what happens if power goes out at your house? Whether you're cloud or not, you're not going to be able to edit, right? So, and I don't want to dismiss that because internet outages are a thing, but at least here in LA, brownouts are a thing, So yes, if there is no internet, you can't do it. I can't talk around that. If we look at doing failovers in the cloud, sure, in case a region goes down, but right now that's prohibitively expensive, and here's why. Because you're also replicating media. You're also replicating workstations to another set of workstations. You're doing data transfers between the two to sync them. And if you're doing this in two different regions, you get egress coming and going. So it becomes kind of expensive to do that as of now.
It does, but the other thing also is, and Amazon will mention this, was it 8 nines of reliability? Cloud doesn't go down. Your connectivity to the cloud may fail because Spectrum has failed you, or in my case, Southern California Edison has failed you yet again. Those are the pieces you can't get past. But the cloud it's going to be eminently available. And when last January, when there were windstorms here, I lost power. They turned it off for me. And I couldn't even make phone calls on my cell phone because everything was so jammed up. I had to drive to the next town over in order to call people and say, sorry, my internet's out completely. But if I had taken my laptop to the next town over and connected it via a hotspot, guess what? I'm still continuing to edit. So those are the pieces that the cloud brings to the table.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeff. I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. The other thing I would mention too is we've spent a lot of time, on, rightly so, on editing, and that's got a heavy client need. But there's other workloads like rendering, where if you lose power in your render farm, you're out of luck. But you're doing rendering in the cloud, and we've got tools like our ThinkBox product, Deadline, that will help you manage the render jobs and allocate resources across a diverse set of instance types. That continues to run even if you lose connection with from the client in your house.
Most certainly. So a couple questions that I can quickly knock out just myself. Jonathan's asking, is there an app to simulate a Mac keyboard? Yes, you can remap your keys, and that works on Teradici. David is asking, or no, Michael was asking, BeBop works with Adobe Premiere and Avid? No? Adobe Premiere for an editorial client only?
Correct. As of right now, we have had a great dancing relationship with Avid, and right now we're just dancing with other people. So right now, if you want to use Avid in the cloud, you'll be going directly through Avid.
Sounds good. Jimmy also points out that if you're complaining about editing in the cloud and the quality, do y'all forget you were okay editing an HD show with SD proxy locally because of cost benefits? I remember those days. MPEG 525 was everywhere. David is asking, can you set QoS on your network switch to reflect your PC OIP connection? One of the things that I've seen out there, and we've implemented for some folks, is you set up a separate firewall that lives on the DMZ of your Spectrum or AT&T provided firewall, so that connectivity is dedicated off that side of it. And also, if anyone who's connected to your home Wi-Fi can't access any of the production stuff that's going on your system because it's separate and often over here. So that's an interesting thing you could go with. And there's a bunch of settings you could get into as far as QoS. A lot of that also is going to depend upon who else is using the bandwidth at your house.
We have a session planning guide which talks about how you could take advantage of that. So check that out.
Very cool. Carlo was asking if there's a hardware limitation using the cloud, screen resolution limit, or the number of screens you can use.
It really depends on the protocol. There are a lot of different protocols for screen sharing, if I can just distill it down to that one name. And depending on what protocol, you get different abilities. I'm sure Ian from Teradici can speak to all the monitors you support via PC over IP.
Yeah, PC over IP is 4 monitors. And then, yeah, there's a collaboration side. So if you're actually screen sharing, which is something we've got coming later this summer, that may impact how many screens you'll be sharing.
Very cool. Rubber Studios is wondering, is cloud viable for small production companies with only a few editors, or is this all more enterprise?
No, I would certainly say I mean, we specialize in working with companies of all sizes, and the smaller production houses that don't have the resources and necessarily the investment, the capital to go and build out their own infrastructure. This is a great solution for.
Yeah, and we have many customers who, I think, just to Ian's point, they've outsourced their IT and they can get on with their work.
Very cool. So the last thing we want to make a comment on, Elizabeth just asked, what are good places to learn for those of us lower level tech employees like assistant editors to look for training and learning about these systems? I just got to say, Keycode Media, we have a full education department, and the truth of the matter is the stretch to operating in a cloud environment is not that different from operating on-prem or on my laptop. It's some things are a little different. There's some extra pieces of software, but once you're in the interface, the core tenets of your editor of choice are there. And I think Michael will probably echo that.
Completely. I don't have anything else to add to that. You're completely right, Jeff.
Cool. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us today. Ian, Michael, great to have you on the panel. Definitely great for us to get this all sorted out. If you've got any questions or you want to talk about cloud solutions, please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to reach out to us here at Keycode Media, and we can hook you up. If there's questions that we need to bring our friends from BeBop or Amazon or Teradici Ian on, we will definitely do that, and we'll get you the best solution for what it is that you need to do. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great Tuesday.